All right, so here is the new Lon Humphrey Minuteman. Just got this today. This one's a little bit different than what you will see for sale on like DLT Trading and Knife Ship Free, in that it's got a stag handle. Lon offered this up on the group sort of as a one-off, maybe two off. I'm not sure how many he made, but it wasn't very many, maybe 2 or 3 potentially. And of course I jumped at the opportunity to get that. I mean, it's a real stag. I mean, you can tell very clearly because there's, you know, little bits and pieces of the velvet still there. I think he might have called this like an amber stag. There's a bit of a pink hue to this. This is just a, you know, off the cuff, quick, you know, initial impression. I only got this today. I haven't really had a chance to, you know, pick it up and fondle it too much because I've been busy working and stuff. So this will be, you know, really a true first impression of the knife. Obviously, you know, I like it. It's got a, you know, really nice size handle. I mean, I've no problems gripping it. It's got a little bit of a guard, which Dan Park there, I guess, had a bit of influence on. It's got a really nice clip point to it, and it tapers quite a bit to a really nice fine tip on it. I don't know if I got a tape measure here or not handy. Like I said, this is just a quick look at the knife. I'm gonna compare it to a couple of other knives here of Lon's, so you can get an idea of the size in comparison to those. This knife is CPM 3V, and it's like a high grind on it, flat grind. Very, very sharp. 3V compared to 52-100 is quite a bit tougher, a lot higher wear resistant steel. It's also powdered metallurgical steel, so supports fine grain structure with a much higher alloy content than you would otherwise be able to get with conventional ingot type steels. So you get a lot more carbides and wear resistant elements in the steel than you would with a conventional type of steel. I'll look at a couple other knives here. These are my 2 most carried knives. My Outlaw Bridger, which is usually always on my hip in the wintertime, especially, and has the older style sheath. It's actually held up really well. I quite like this sheath. Carries a little bit high, but it's nicely broken in, so it's quite flexible. And of course, fantastic blade shape. So not to get too carried away with the other knives, you can see that it's considerably larger than this knife. I don't actually have a standard issue Bridger, but I believe they are the same you know, dimensions as the Outlaw Bridger with the raised clip. So it's a, you know, fairly large knife in comparison to this Minuteman. Now if we look at the Tarpon, which is, in my opinion, probably one of the best EDC knives out there, this is a tiny little guy in comparison to the Minuteman. And the Minuteman is not very big. So hopefully I'm getting this on camera. I think this is a pretty fair comparison, as I believe a lot of people that would be interested in a knife like this may also be interested in a knife like this. And people that are interested in a knife like this that may be intending on, you know, carrying it every day, or, you know, frequently anyways, having that comparison to something that is really small and carryable is good to have. So this is also in CPM 3V. What do we got here? I have dial caliper, so I can give you an indication of stock thickness. I don't have the specs in front of me, but I believe it's 150. Yeah, so I'm not sure if you can see it here. It's pretty dusty in my shop down here. What do we got? But 150. Hopefully you can see that there on the camera. Thickness behind the edge. If I can get that on here. Ooh. Now that's what I like to see. 23 thou. Should be a little thicker at the tip. No, that's pretty consistent. That's pretty damn near perfect, in my opinion. So 3V is pretty darn good edge stability. Maybe not quite as much, you know, at the really high or low angles that you can get away with 52-100. I mean, I haven't experienced anything that suggests, you know, that I've sharpened things at too shallow of an angle. But what else can I talk about here? Really, I mean, for me, biggest thing is the steel change. I like 3V. I really like 52-100. 3V has some real advantages over 52-100 in the corrosion resistance department. Where I live, it's really quite humid. It's not warm per se, but I mean, I live right near the ocean, so in the Pacific Northwest, so we get a lot of corrosion, a lot of salt. The air itself is salty, and things will just rust. You know, just sitting there, you can look at them and they'll rust right before your eyes. So 3V for me does not rust like, you know, a standard carbon tool steel. It will pit, and you know, you'll end up getting some damage on the blade in forms of pits and stuff like that, but it cleans up really easily if you ever do get any. And to be honest, I mean, unless I leave something, you know, sitting in a cool, damp room or something like that, it just doesn't rust. It hardly stains. I've noticed some of my blades that are in 3V, they maybe have changed the temper cycle. Maybe they're doing a low temper versus a high temper, I don't know, but I've noticed that there's a little bit more staining on some of them than when 3V sort of first came on the market. They tended to be a little more stain resistant, but maybe there's something else going on in the heat treat. You know, as more makers and stuff have, you know, transitioned to using 3V, they've probably learned, you know, some tricks and whatnot as far as what works good in a knife versus, you know, in an industrial setting, because that's what the, you know, the heat treatment protocols are geared towards when you look at the steel manufacturer's information, like the data sheets and stuff. So anyways, yeah, in terms of my experience with the tarpon, which is also in 3V, it's a little more involved as far as sharpening and keeping up. I find, you know, I can give it a few passes on a ceramic rod and get it to, you know, touch up. It doesn't like as fine of a, you know, an edge that 52-100 does. And, you know, in terms of, you know, ease of keeping that edge, you know, hair popping sharp, 52-100 for me, you know, is significantly easier to keep it at that level of sharpness, whereas 3V doesn't really shine in that department. I find that 3V really excels with a more aggressive toothy edge. You know, something that's not sharpened to the same level of mirror polish that you know, would want to do with 52-100. You don't actually, from my experience, get a lot of benefits. You actually maybe lose some benefits by taking the edge to a really high polished finish with 3V. Whereas in 52-100, you do gain a lot of, you know, benefits by doing that. So that's one thing to, you know, to think about when you end up getting a knife like this that is in 3V. There may be a bit of a learning curve as far as what you're used to maintaining and sharpening, you know, knives that are a more simple carbon steel, you know, that aren't as highly alloyed. But once you learn that, sort of sharpening technique and what works good, also the type of edge, sometimes, you might find that instead of sharpening at 20 degrees, you want to sharpen at, like, say, 17. And, if you do that, that, 17-degree edge will sharpen up quicker than a 20-degree edge. And you'll also be able to, get more touch-ups on a ceramic rod than you would with a 20-degree edge, because that apex, every time you touch it up, you reduce the acuteness of that apex, right? So if you're starting off at 17 degrees versus 20, it's going to take X number of times more sharpenings or touch-ups than it would at a 20-degree secondary bevel to get to the same sort of, obtuseness. Just trying to think what else I can talk about this knife. The Stag. It's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. We should maybe try and get a little bit of a closer look here. And these are also pretty reasonably priced. I mean, they're in the $300 range on Knife Ship Free and DLT Trading. I mean, I buy just about all of my knives from both of those dealers, and they are absolutely excellent and basically set the standard for all other knife retailers to follow it. I feel they've been really good to deal with. Trying to look at the screen here on the video to make sure I'm getting this in focus. With a knife like this, I mean, see that name there? It says Humphrey. And if you know Lon's knives, you know that, he and he alone, along with his wife, make these. Nobody else does. He's in complete control of every step and process that goes into making these knives. I know that with the 3V knives, they do go out for a commercial heat treat, and that's not a negative. To do these at the shop level would just be painstaking, because they are a high alloyed steel, so when you do heat treat them, they have to be fully wrapped in a oxygen what's the word, oxygen deprived environment. So they wrap them up in a stainless tin foil. Basically, it's special foil that's used for heat treating, and then each knife blank has to go into the oven and get heat treated and then come out. So I mean, to do that, on a semi-production run of knives where somebody's making, I don't know, say 100 or 200 knives, I mean, it's just, it's an extreme amount of work. And for what? This knife will be heat treated to Lon specs. I know that. He doesn't just send things out and say, hey, you do what you think is best for this knife. I mean, he's a master of the heat treat. I mean, I've seen firsthand what his 52-100 would do, and I know he spends a lot of time developing his heat treat and stuff. And he's you're getting, when you buy one of these knives, you can buy with confidence that you're not just buying something that somebody's made in their shop with a grinder and slapped a handle on and sent it out for just a regular old generic heat treat. For instance, he's spent a heck of a lot of time and energy and puts his heart and soul into what he's doing here, and that really translates when you pick one of these up and you use them. I mean, they're really special. I mean, yeah, I know I'm probably rambling here as I'm just shooting from the hip, but I really, 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 really like Lon's knives. I don't have one single knife that I don't like. They're all fantastic users. I'm not easy to please when it comes to things like this. I'm pretty picky. I don't just buy them and collect them. I do use them. So, I mean, got a lot of experience hunting and fishing and overall knife use, and, you know, sharpening, and I dabble a little bit myself in trying to make knives. Obviously nothing like this. You know, so I think I have some valuable experience when it comes to using them, and my input from my perspective. You know, I've got a little bit of experience to back that up, I think. So I actually, if I can afford it, I'd really like to get one of these just in a canvas micarta, something that I can throw on my hip and, you know, just use and not worry about it. I mean, this is a really beautiful piece of stag here, and I mean, I know knives are supposed to be used, but you do get a knife like this and you go, man, I couldn't handle it if, you know, I abused it or did something stupid and damaged it. But sooner or later you just end up going, you know what, it's just, they're meant to be used, and you use them. Stuff happens, but you can't enjoy a sports car for just sitting in your garage, right? You can't really enjoy a knife and truly appreciate it unless you use it the way it was intended to be used. So in my initial impression of this knife, this would also be a fantastic medium sized game hunting knife. Clip points are really good for field resting. The point is slightly below the level of the spine. I mean, it's not a drop point, but I mean, clip points are really good for piercing, like under the tail, you know, the deer, if you're gotten a deer and stuff like that, and also working in, you know, doing fine detailed work and stuff like that. I mean, they are more delicate than standard drop point that doesn't have a clip on it. But, you know, if you use a knife the way it's supposed to be used and don't pry on it and do stupid things, you know, something like this won't be a hindrance. It's actually a benefit. So, I mean, I have broken tips off knives, and that wasn't actually, the one time I did that on a moose, it wasn't really my fault. It was a crappy Gerber Steadfast, because the knife that I did have got stolen or misplaced or something. I mean, I'm pretty sure it was stolen, and I bought it as a emergency sort of backup on a moose hunt, and I popped the tip off, popping a knee joint on a moose. And guess what? When I phoned Gerber, they told me I was on my own. So never, ever, ever again will I buy a Gerber. So you get what you pay for. And yeah. Keep rambling away here, but it's really a nice knife. One last look. Oh, here, I've got my Alpha here too. I didn't compare it to that. That might be something of interest for some of you that are watching this video. The Alpha is a fairly large knife, but it is not considerably larger than the Minuteman. And another thing to mention, the name. If you don't know where that name comes from, then I can't explain it to you. But it's as far as American history goes, it's very significant in their history and what the Minuteman militia stood for and what they did. And then, let's see here. Before I end this video, I'll do one other quick comparison. Let's see if we can get that in the shot. Cutting myself. I got pretty thick skin. And you can get a pretty good idea of the size comparison between those knives. So that one gets carried a lot. That one right now is what gets carried most often. That one there, I mean, it's definitely a very easy knife to carry. I've been carrying it a little bit today. I have not, pulled it in and out of the sheath here more than just a couple of times yet, but I can already see that the sheath is starting to take a bit of shape as far as the way it carries on my belt. Sheath size comparisons between the Minuteman sheath and then the tarpon sheath. The tarpon sheath is held up pretty good. I accidentally stuck the knife in a little bit there. You can just see it. I didn't make it all the way through, but found it a little bit awkward dropping the knife in and being careful. I barely did that once before, but I'm usually pretty good about that. The new sheaths are also made by the Amish, so you know that they care about what they're doing and don't cut corners, and put a lot of care and attention to detail in whatever they make. Definitely real quality craftsmen, and you have to appreciate that. I think it's buffalo hide. Maybe that's buffalo hide, I don't know. I did hear mention that the sheath had a buffalo hide top piece on it, or maybe it was all buffalo hide. I'd have to look. But in any case, I will leave a link in the description to DLT Trading's website to where you can find this knife, and also knives ship free in their website, in the section where you can find the Minuteman. So I urge you guys to check these out. So far, I'm really impressed with it, and I think you will be too. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to reading and replying to your comments in the video section.